Good morning, members Garrett, Holmes, staff, and guests. The lobbies are open and the recording has begun.
Good morning, everyone. I would like to call the Washington State Liquor and Cannabis Board meeting to order. Jim is on vacation this week, so I will be the acting chair for the board meeting this morning. And we will begin with approval of the meeting minutes that as listed on the agenda.
Madam Chair, I move that we approve the minutes as listed on the agenda.
Thank you, and I second. Next, we will go into review and consideration of Spirits Pilot Program Extension Requests, T-Mobile Park, and Joe will be presenting us on that.
Good morning, Acting Chair Garrett and Board Member Holmes. Joe Rademacher here with the Licensing Division. I'm here today to present a recommendation seeking allowance to extend the pilot project with T-Mobile Park and Sodexo that allows for spirits consumption throughout general seating in their facility for a second year. Joining me today in this recommendation are Sarah Oakey from the research program, Lieutenant Reeder from Enforcement and Education, as well as our public health liaison, Kristen Haley, all of whom have played integral parts in this evaluation. Over the course of the past year, we have worked closely with representatives from Sodexo and T-Mobile Park to evaluate their performance under this pilot program. We've met several times to discuss their efforts within the pilot guidelines. Through it all, representatives from Sodexo and the Mariners organizations were ready and willing to collaborate and provide honest information and feedback to us. Most recently, we attended a site visit at T-Mobile Park where we conducted a walkthrough of the facility to see the locations where they were selling these spirits, as well as to meet with them to discuss how the pilot had gone and receive a briefing on a proposal they had for what is now the secret door service at T-Mobile Park. We've also conducted follow-on internal meetings in March and April to develop the recommendation that we are bringing before you here today. Our enforcement team played a vital role in evaluating the licensee's operations over the past year, having conducted 7 premises checks during the pilot period, where they found staff to be responsive to their findings and performing with public safety in mind. They had 0 violations during this pilot year, took alcohol control and public safety seriously, and operated within the pilot parameters faithfully. Additionally, the data provided to our research program showed there was minimal increase in alcohol-related incidents at T-Mobile Park, which was an expectation of ours, along with a slight increase in sales throughout the year. This level of service compared to the previous year was as expected, indicating that the safety and security measures that were implemented as part of the pilot had their intended effect. If approved for an extension, these safety and security measures would be continued and include things such as the staff to guest ratio of 1:45 for the duration of the extension, continued limited service of a spirits menu that has an alcohol by volume level of 12.5% or less, as well as preventing service of standalone single servings of spirits such as shots, doubles, and bottle service in the general consumption areas. We would also review progress at the 6 and 12-month mark to evaluate incident trends and impacts on public health and safety. And we would also place an increased emphasis, a continued increased emphasis on site visits at this venue throughout the duration of the pilot project. Should the board approve this pilot project extension as recommended, we will continue to work with the licensee in the coming months to evaluate its impact on public health and safety concerns in an effort to prevent any significant increases in alcohol-related incidences. Although the scope of data sharing and the research program's involvement to evaluate may be reduced, we would still work with the licensee to ensure any trends are identified and included in future decision-making for the pilot program. As is the case with every SEF license and pilot project, should the board decide to approve this request, we have the authority and the ability to adapt the pilot through required adjustments to their service or to rescind the exception outright should the agency determine the effects of the pilot are a detriment to the health and safety of the public. At this time, I would be happy to answer any questions, and we also have our internal partners online if you have any questions for them.
This is Ali. I don't have any questions. You did a thorough job on my one-on-one with you of walking through all of the thorough work that was done to get this to this before the board today. And I just want to thank you, licensing, and also for working with Sarah and her team on getting this bought ready and to bring before the board today. Pete, did you have any comments?
Just a quick one, and I'm also ready to give a motion. I also very much enjoyed learning a lot about the extension. I think the team has done an amazing job. I agree with everything you said, Madam Chair. And with that, I'd like to enthusiastically move the board to approve the Spirits Pilot Program extension.
Pete, I'll ask for the motion. So now can I get a motion based on the discussion?
Yes, I move to approve the extension request. Thank you.
And I second. Thank you.
Thank you, board members Garrett and Holmes. And I do want to say thank you to all the team that has participated in this evaluation.
Thank you. Now with that, we're going to go into rulemaking timelines for all industries. Kevin is going to kick us off on this.
Right. Good morning, Acting Chair Garrett and Board Member Holmes. As with yesterday's caucus update, my update this morning will be brief, given that we met just a couple of weeks ago. But there have been a few rulemaking developments that I will share with you. With the 3 CR 105s filed at our last board meeting, or following our last board meeting, we're now up to 15 open rules projects. And under our delegated authority, we'll be filing another CR 101 this month to initiate rulemaking to implement House Bill 1941, which allows agricultural cannabis cooperatives. So with the 3 recently filed CR 105s, the CR 101 we filed last month on 1701, the liquor licensees leasing space to one another bill, and this latest CR 101, we are well underway toward implementation of this year's legislation. And while we're adding to the list of new projects, we've got a few that are nearing completion. This morning, we'll be requesting approval to file 2 CR 103s, one to adopt final rules on contract kitchens implementing Engrossed House Bill 1602, and the other one on the trade practice rules repeal. Additionally, at the public hearing on cannabis advertising, implementing Senate Bill 5206, held on April 23rd, we received a few comments on the draft rules requesting amendments and clarification. So to address these comments, we'll be making some minor edits to the rule language and are now planning to request approval for the CR 103 on that one at next month's board meeting. Moving on to petitions. Today, Denise will be presenting our recommendation on 4 petitions received within the last 60 days, all from a single petitioner. We also received another petition from the same person last week and plan to provide our recommendation to the board for that one at the June board meeting. And actually, since yesterday's caucus, we've received 2 more petitions from that same petitioner, as well as another petition from an unrelated party. So that's 3 petitions within the last 24 hours. That, like I said, it's going to be brief, so that should do it for me today. I'm happy to answer any questions you might have.
I have no questions. Pete, do you have any questions?
No questions.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jeff. And with that, we will move on to, I'm sorry, thank you, Kevin. We will move on to Jeff presenting us on alcohol-related rulemaking. And you have 2 items to present. Jeff?
Yeah, I have the first item, 1602.
Okay.
Okay.
Oh,
So, yeah, okay. Good morning, Acting Chair Garrett and Board Member Holmes. This morning, the Director's Office would like to request the board's approval to file the permanent rules that are needed to implement engrossed House Bill 1602 regarding the contracting of kitchen space or other mobile food services for breweries and microbreweries. The bill 1602 was passed by the legislature in 2025, and it expands the food service options available for domestic breweries and microbreweries that want to apply for and maintain alcohol licenses so that they can operate as beer and wine restaurants or as spirits beer and wine restaurants, depending on the license type. The permanent amendments to the existing rules affect WAC sections 314, 02015, 035, and 045, and allow domestic breweries or microbreweries to contract, lease, or sublease out the kitchen space for food service purposes to qualify and maintain a spirits, beer, and wine license or beer and wine restaurant license. Regarding mobile units, 1602 expands the rules to allow contracted mobile food units that sell food and non-alcoholic beverages to the public to contract with the breweries. And it also allows the domestic brewery or microbrewery business to own and operate a mobile food unit themselves to meet their restaurant food service requirements for the restaurant license types. These rule changes also regulate breweries and microbreweries seeking restaurant licenses by setting storage requirements on the licensed premises to maintain secured storage space for non-tax paid alcohol. These requirements in these rules also include requirements that the license holder list what information is included in the contractor lease, including diagrams, inspection information, and notices, the required food service permits, and the terms regarding the hours of food operations of the contract food service provider. These rules require that changes to the domestic brewery or microbrewery's contract or lease, vendor or vendors, or the kitchen plan must be submitted to the board. And finally, these rules require beer and wine restaurants or spirits beer and wine restaurant licensees to be sure that the full food service requirements of the license are met at all times when they are open for business. The public rulemaking hearing for this rule was held on April 9th, 2026, and there was no testimony received at the hearing. And during the formal rulemaking comment period, only one written question connected to the proposed rules was received. So to wrap up, if approved today, these rules will be filed today with the Office of the Code Revisor, and the permanent rule changes will take effect on June 6th, 2026. I'm happy to answer any questions about this permanent CR 103 rule package. Thanks.
Thank you, Jeff. I have no questions. Pete, before I call for a motion, did you have any questions?
No questions.
Okay,
Thanks, Jeff.
with that, can I get a motion on adoption of the CR 103 for 2025 legislative implementation package for contract kitchens?
Madam Chair, I move the board to adopt the CR 103 for the 2025 legislative implementation package for contract kitchens.
I second. And with that, thank you, Jeff.
Thank you.
Alrighty. Next action item, Daniel will be presenting to us the adoption of the CR 103 for repeal of trade practice rules. Daniel?
Thank you. Good morning, Acting Chair Garrett and Member Holmes. I'm here this morning on behalf of the Director's Office to request approval for filing a CR 103 on repeal of trade practice rules via expedited rulemaking under RCW 3405-353. Under the procedure for expedited rulemaking found in that same RCW, if approved for filing today, the CR 103 will be filed immediately and effective immediately. The CR 105 was filed on March 4th and published on March 18th, and that triggered a 45-day window where people could file written objections to the use of expedited rulemaking. No written objections were filed by the end of the 45 days, which was yesterday, and therefore we are permitted to proceed with the CR 103 today. The Director's Office is proposing to repeal 3 rules consistent with the court decision from 2019, which the board chose at the time not to appeal. The rules in question are Washington Administrative Code 314-23-065, 314-23080, and 314-23085. All of these relate to liquor rules. 065 defines the phrase unfair trade practices. 080 describes the permitted type of volume discounts that spirit and wine distributors are allowed to provide to retail licensees, while 085 describes those same kind of discounts that are not permitted. The court found that language in these rules is improper, in part because it conflicts with RCW 66-28-170, which the court found already addressed these topics. That statute remains valid, and its continued validity is part of why the board chose not to appeal the decision at the time in 2019, and why the agency does not think it's necessary to conduct rulemaking to replace those parts of the rule language which the court didn't address. This also goes, well, the next part of the question might be why it's taken, 5.5 years to address this. So the court's decision came down in October 2019, and just a few, within 5 months, the pandemic began. And then the years following that, I think we all remember, right? The agency's business for those next few years was really focused on addressing the pandemic, and this topic, frankly, just fell by the wayside. Therefore, I'm requesting approval of the CR 103 on trade practice repeal rulemaking. Thank you, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Daniel. I don't have any questions. Pete, do you have any questions?
No questions.
Okay, with that, can I get a motion for adoption of the CR 103 for repeal of trade practice rules?
Madam Chair, I move the board to adopt the CR 103 to repeal the trade practice rules as discussed.
With that, I second, and thank you, Daniel. Okay, Denise, we will now move to cannabis-related rulemaking, and I think you have 4 action items to present to us today.
I do. Good morning. Good morning, Acting Board Chair Garrett and Board Member Holmes. This morning, I am presenting the Director's Office recommendations regarding 4 related petitions for rulemaking that we received on March 19th, March 27th, April 2nd, and April 9th from Amy Deluge, owner of the Green Seed, a cannabis retailer in Moses Lake. The rules team also sent reply emails acknowledging these petitions to the petitioner on March 19th, March 30th, April 3rd, and April 9th, respectively. These petitions for rulemaking ask the LCB to initiate the rulemaking process to consider doing the following. The first petition asked to temporarily suspend cannabis traceability requirements under WAC 314-55-083, pending development of an updated traceability system to replace the Cannabis Central Reporting System, also known as CCRS. The second petition asked to discontinue the use of a plus or minus 5% deviation standard, used to identify possible non-compliance with traceability requirements under WAC 314-55-083 because this standard does not appear in rule. The third petition asked to create a new rule to mandate the audio-visual recording of all LCB interactions with cannabis licensees. And the fourth petition asked to establish the Americans with Disabilities Act, also known as ADA, accessibility standards for CCRS in rule. The Director's Office is recommending denying the 4 petitions for the following reasons. Petition 1, LCB currently uses CCRS for traceability reporting. LCB is aware of data limitations related to CCRS as reported by the Joint Legislative Audit and Review Committee, or JLARC, and the state auditor cited by the petitioner. However, temporarily suspending all traceability reporting pending development of an updated traceability system would remove all requirements for all licensees to report traceability and tracking information for cannabis, which remains a federally illegal controlled substance for non-medical uses, as recent action has indicated. Despite its limitations, CCRS continues to be the sole source of traceability data necessary for the LCB to effectively regulate cannabis, which includes the tracking and inventory and transfer of cannabis, as well as production, laboratory testing, and sales information. For petition 2, LCB finance staff worked with the examiners in our enforcement and education division to develop the 5% threshold as a working standard to identify discrepancies between what retailers report to finance when they submit their cannabis excise tax receipts and what they report in CCRS as an initial indicator that review may be appropriate. Because this is not a requirement for licensees and is not an independent basis for any violation or administrative action, but rather an internal working standard or process, it would not be appropriate to include it in rules under Title 314 WAC. For petition 3, audio-visual recording of interactions between LCB staff and licensees is not authorized in statute. RCW 10-109-030 restricts the use of body-worn cameras to officers employed by a general authority Washington law enforcement agency, as defined in RCW 10-39-020. Under the same RCW, LCB is defined as a limited authority Washington law enforcement agency. Therefore, allowing body-worn cameras among LCB enforcement officers would require a change in statute and cannot be accomplished under rulemaking. And for petition 4, currently CCRS meets basic functionality required by the ADA. LCB's Information Technology Services section or division is developing a roadmap for bringing it into compliance to the new upcoming WCAG 2.2 AA standards, which are now set to take effect next April in 2027. They, based on a recent deadline extension for these standards. Further, various federal and state regulations already require accessibility standards for governmental entities more broadly. Inclusion of these standards by reference or similar language in Chapter 314-55 WAC would not only be redundant, but inappropriate, as the purpose of the regulations under WAC 314-55 under Chapter 314-55 WAC is specifically to outline the application process, qualification, and requirements to obtain and maintain a cannabis license and the reporting requirements for a cannabis licensee. So based on these reasons, the Director's Office is recommending the board deny each of the 4 related petitions submitted by Amy Deluge during March and April of this year. Thank you, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Denise. Before I entertain the motion to deny all 4, and from the way it's listed on the agenda, Pete, we're gonna do them individual. Are there any comments or any questions before we go through the motions?
No questions.
Okay, so with that on petition 1, I'm asking for a motion to deny rule petition review and consideration to suspend traceability requirements.
So moved.
I'm asking for a motion to deny rule petition review and consideration to discontinue the use of 5% standard deviation threshold related to the CCRS reporting.
So moved.
I'm asking for a motion to deny the rule petition review and consideration to require recording of all interactions between LCB and cannabis licensees.
So moved.
And the last one, I'm asking for a motion to deny rule petition review and consideration to establish accessibility standards for the CCRS system in rule.
So moved.
Thank you. And that takes us to the end of our agenda and items for today's board meeting. With that, I will call the meeting to end and thank you all for attending.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.